US President Joe Biden has announced the withdrawal of all American troops from Afghanistan by September 11. This decision is to honor the Doha peace agreement signed by the Trump administration back in 2020 with the Taliban and Afghan government. It stated that US forces in the country would be pulled out by May 1. This deadline has been extended by Biden to the 20th anniversary of the disastrous 9/11 attacks that initiated the longest US war lasting for 2 decades. There are at least 2,500 US troops in Afghanistan currently and over 6,500 NATO troops. The impact of this announcement on various actors within Afghanistan and outside is bound to be far-reaching. It is expected to affect the neighboring states, especially Pakistan that harbors the Taliban, as well as Afghan refugees.
So we have with us today Chayanika Saxena, a President Graduate Fellow and PhD candidate from the Department of Geography of National University of Singapore. Her key area of research and doctoral thesis looks at the interaction spaces and political subjectivities of the Afghan diaspora in India. She has over 6 years of research experience on Afghanistan and has published and presented on related matters nationally and internationally. Thank you for being with us, Chayanika.
Thank you so much, Madhura, for having me here.
I would like to open with the question, like seeing everything that's going on in Afghanistan right now, how likely is it that there'll be a surgence of militia or the rise of Taliban once the US troops are withdrawn from the region?
Okay, I'll begin by answering this latter part of your question. Taliban has been around. Taliban has been around since 2005, if not really before that, because we saw the emergence of what we know as the neo-Taliban in 2005. So it was decimated prior to that. So the Taliban has been around, and which is precisely the reason why they had an agreement with the United States of America last year. So I think that addresses the latter part of the question. As far as militias are concerned, they too have been around for greatest part of the last 40 years in Afghanistan. So it's quite likely that they're going to become even more strong. They're going to come back with a lot of force for the simple reason that they'd like to hold their fort for the people who they're representing. So we have militias in the north, we have militias in the south. So what they're trying to do after the United States of America withdraws, it would be to just shore up their presence in Afghanistan so that they can hold on to whatever that they've managed to grab and gather in the last 20 years that the United States of America has been around. So it will just result, I think, in the intensification, if not really the rise of all these people, because they have been around for the longest while. So we'll just see the intensification of these militias and these insurgent groups as they would try to seek power in Afghanistan even more.
All right. So the Taliban has been opposing the withdrawal, now that it's been delayed and everything. Do you think that the American troops in the region will face some grave danger till the time they have withdrawn? Because the initial date was supposed to be May 1st, and now they have extended it. So are they in danger of any sorts, the American troops in the region?
According to the Taliban, yes. But given the situation on the ground, I don't really think that the Taliban would be that audacious to attack the withdrawing American forces, because they have been Biden has extended the deadline for the timeline from the 1st of May to the 11th of September. That is, I think, understandable. And even the Taliban acknowledges that somewhere down the line that they need to ensure that the United States of America departs in a manner which does not create a power vacuum immediately, because even the Taliban would not be able to exploit it as much. And given that the COVID cases are rising again in Afghanistan, it's quite likely that the Taliban would not really push forth with an action that we'd expect of them otherwise. So no, I don't think that the American forces are in grave danger. And even if they were to be, I think Biden was pretty clear that they are going to retaliate in the same measure.
All right. And since the Taliban has maintained sanctuaries in Pakistan, how will this decision affect the Pakistani locals or the residents?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So recently, I think there was a paper by Bruce Riddle or somebody whose name I'm forgetting. I'm really bad with names. I'm sorry with that. So he had suggested that the Taliban maintains active contacts with the TTP, which has been a source of massive problem in Pakistan. So Taliban's victory would actually be seen as a victory of an Islamist force over a secular superpower. So that would have rippling effects in Pakistan, and as we had seen somewhere in the 2000 reasons as well. The resurgence of Taliban had a massive impact on how extremism, how other extremist religious forces had spread across the Pakistani territory. So it will have a spillover effect, because somewhere the victory of the Taliban has emboldened other forces to believe that they too can defeat organized military forces, whether that's that of the United States of America, or for that matter, if that's of Pakistan. So it has emboldened the forces a lot more, and probably in the years to come, we'd see that kind of impact. If not really in the mainland territory of Pakistan, but at least along the border of Pakistan, the one that it shares with Afghanistan. So there will be a resurgence of that kind of force, the extremist forces that we all are quite worried about.
All right. And do you think this will affect the US-Pakistan relationship?
Really depends on the kind of so the rippling effects. If the rippling effects remain contained within Pakistan, then I think United States of America won't be bothered much, because they've made it pretty clear that so long as Afghanistan's territory or the territory of any other country is not being used to attack United States of America, the United States of America would just stay where it is. It's not going to go and invade another country at least at this point of time. So if these extremist forces do not impact the security, do not impact the economic interest or other vital interests of the United States of America, I don't think it will result in a lot of imbalance. But given that these extremist forces have had the tendency of attacking secular forces, be it the United States of America or India, then I think in a by the way kind of manner, it might have an impact on the relationship between the two.
All right. And if there's like a case of destabilization in Pakistan or something, do you think they are at a position to ask for help from the US? Is their relationship strong enough for that?
I don't think that the United States of America would allow Pakistan to get destabilized to such an extent that it would have to seek help, because if Pakistan implodes, it will result in a lot of things which would not be in favor of Pakistan, which would not be in favor of the United States, or for that matter, even China. So I think an internal destabilization of the current regime is unlikely. So the military would continue to stay in power. So I don't think that, and in case that happens, the United States of America can be expected to intervene. In what way, we're not really sure about that right now.
Okay. And what about India then? Should India be worried of the situation? Are there any policy decisions that we need to make on priority as such?
We've not made any decisions so far. So some of the academic analysts, including me, we have been of the opinion that we need to reach out to the Taliban, because it's an inevitability. It will be around in Afghanistan. And I think our best bet would be to ensure that it is mainstream, so that we can put some kind of civil shackles on it. So at this point of time, Taliban still remains an insurgent group which is completely out of bounds, which is completely unrestrained. So if we were to make it a political actor, it's quite likely that we'd be able to bind it to certain principles and ways of working. So I think for India, it is quite necessary at this stage to start talking to the Taliban, if not really recognizing it as a force as such, unless it complies with certain basic norms associated with the constitution of Afghanistan. But I think the first and the foremost thing we need to do would be to start reaching out in a formal manner, so that, as I've mentioned somewhere else as well, so that we can dehyphenate Pakistan and the Taliban and allow Taliban to function as a political representative of Afghanistan, so that we can then engage with it in a manner that so that it gives us also a sense of confidence that we're not really dealing with Pakistani stooges, but with a political representative, which can then be tamed according to certain principles of working, certain ways of going about dealing with them would change. So the dynamics would change.
All right. So the Afghan minister has reached out to the External Affairs Minister of India recently, and they've been asking for our help. So do you think the Afghan government is at a position by themselves to deal with this Taliban situation once the US troops are withdrawn, once the US interference stops? And what do you think will the response be of the international community for this situation?
All right. So the Afghan government in and of itself, in my opinion, is not really capable of dealing with the Taliban's rise on its own. And there are many reasons for it, including the fact that the people of Afghanistan do not really have a lot of faith in the governmental institutions because of how it has fared in the last few years. So that's one of the reasons why I think that it will not be sufficient on the part of the Afghan government to deal with it on itself, and rather involve a lot of international players, as it has been. It's pretty unfortunate that the Taliban, which could have used these Istanbul conference as an opportunity to shore up its image, decided to back out of it. So somewhere Afghanistan recognizes, the government of Afghanistan recognizes that it requires support from the external communities, external actors, and it's been reaching out to a lot of them, including India. I think that the recent visit of Hanif Atmar being a proof of that. So I think that is a good way forward, for the reason that Afghanistan's government, Afghanistan's military forces, and a lot of other forces which are currently the legitimate players in Afghanistan, they might not be able to deal with an insurgent movement which has been as violent as the Taliban's, considering that they apparently have a lot of control over Afghan areas and the other things. So they would require international support. And as far as India's, I think if I could perhaps just add a bit on how India would like to respond to it. India has been a steadfast supporter of Afghanistan's government, of the constitutional structure of Afghanistan. And I think we'd continue to work according to that kind of matrix. We will try to fit in that matrix again and again. And we have been present at a few regional conferences. We have marked our presence at a few international conferences. And we would stand by the government of Afghanistan and the decision that it takes, and in the decisions that will help it continue working as a constitutional republic, as a democratic country, and not really as a typical theocratic Islamist force.
All right. Do you think this will affect the situation in Kashmir, the political situation in Kashmir in any way?
Not the political situation as such. It would not have a terrible impact in it. It didn't really have it in the past as well. So it had a security impact, which then had a political impact as such. So as I had mentioned, I think in my answer to one of your previous questions, so the victory, the so-called victory of the Taliban, as it claims, over the United States America, would make the other extremist groups believe that they can also defeat other secular superpowers, secular forces, and they could make them just bend to their rules. So that could have an impact on the extremist forces, which unfortunately spill over into our side of the territory, and as we had seen in 1989 as well. So this could have an impact on the security situation, which could then result in some kind of political instability, but that's more like a rippling effect of sort, of not really directly related to it.
All right. And in case of like extremism, like you had mentioned, that if the extremist forces like do act out, is there a possibility of the Central Asian states joining forces in any way, any sort of a dispute arrangement squad or something, to reduce the impact that's affecting the neighboring states as well?
There has been a grouping. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was led by Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan. So there have been groupings of that sort. And then there's another mechanism called the SCO, which has had Central Asian participation, which has had South Asian participation. So all of these could come together to ensure that it doesn't spill over. And I think China here would have a massive role to play, since it does not want, since the territory, a big part of Chinese territory, but with Afghanistan, it does not want the kind of extremism that has unfortunately been a part of Afghanistan to spill over into its side of the territory. So these forces would definitely come together to ensure that extremism remains contained within the boundaries of Afghanistan, and slowly and steadily is eroded or minimized from there as well.
Right. So these are all the questions from my side. Do you want to add any comments or give your opinions about anything?
Sure. I think I'll just reiterate what I had said during our conversation, and that is that India must reach out to the Taliban. And by reaching out, I'm not really saying that we should become friends with them. The point is to understand the sensitivity of the situation at hand, and it is in our vital interest to support the current government of Afghanistan, the people of Afghanistan who have completely been saturated with the violence that they've seen all around them. And the best way forward would be to ensure that every party which has been a part of this conflict reconciles with each other, and that can happen only and only when we extend the government of Afghanistan the support that they need. And if it requires that we reach out to Afghanistan, then so be it. So as a neighboring country of Afghanistan, as a partner of Afghanistan, as a strategic ally, I think it would be in our interest as well as that of Afghanistan to measure the situation in a manner as it's unfolding, and not stick to our old guns, because they will be of no use now.
Yes. Thank you so much, Chayanika. You've given us a lot of food for thought and a very interesting discussion. Thank you so much.